Yeah. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. Today we're talking about quarterbacks. We're going to start and sit for Week 9 fantasy football. Already had some breaking news earlier today about Aaron Rodgers not going to be active here this week. We'll cover that, though, once we get to the Green Bay matchup. But first, we got a couple other things to talk about. First, how do we do in Week 8? And announce the giveaway here for November through Prize Picks. For the first things, for Week 8, how do we do? And really, despite some underperforming studs and some guys that were at the bottom of the barrel that came out and balled out, it wasn't too bad of a week. Out of the 28 quarterbacks we gave a start or sit designation to, 18 were correct for an accuracy percentage of 64%. Mike White, Justin Fields, Geno Smith, they actually looked pretty good in Week 8. They were all misses. Ryan Tannehill, Carson Wentz, Aaron Rodgers, Aaron looking good there with no weapons in Green Bay. Unfortunately, won't get to see that here this week, but overall 64%. Don't hate that, all things considered. But now moving forward here, we announced our winner from the October giveaway in our running back video. So if you haven't checked that one out, make sure you do. But here for November, we wanted to up our game just a little bit, right? We want to make sure that we give people what they want at the time in which they need it. Well, the holidays are right around the corner and everybody likes some money in their pocket, so you better believe we're offering $500 cash as the November giveaway here for anybody who signs up on Prize Picks. That's right, head over to prizepicks.com, download the app, there's a link down below in the description, create a new account. Use the referral code Headliners. Make your minimum $20 deposit. We'll match your deposit all the way up to $100, and then you're entered into this giveaway. I'll be announcing it here at the end of the month. Looking forward to doing that. But now, every game, every matchup, every quarterback starting Thursday Night Football, New York Jets, Indianapolis Colts. And what about Mike White? Just where did that come from? That caught everybody by surprise. I don't think anybody was expecting 405 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, all while completing 37 of his 45 pass attempts. But how? How did this happen? I mean, it's still the Jets. I mean, come on. How did he do that? Well, he was smart, and he really utilized the short passing game with his running backs, Jamison Crowder, Braxton Berrios, Elijah Moore, all short passes. How short were they? Well, he only averaged 5 air yards per attempt, which means for every pass attempt, it only traveled 5 yards in the air. He wasn't going deep down the field very often, but it was his receivers, it was his ball catchers that were making plays, right? Because they averaged 7 yards after the catch. So that's what really helped boost his overall totals. Now he gets a matchup against the Indianapolis Colts, who do allow more points than we saw from the Cincinnati Bengals just last week. Indianapolis allows right around 20 fantasy points per game. But they can't sustain this pace, right? I mean, I love the story. I love what I saw. I love the play of one Mike White. But before I actually trust it in my fantasy lineup, I need to make sure that wasn't just a fluke. He puts together a couple strong games. Maybe we look at him as like a quarterback too in some leagues here down the stretch. But as of right now, I'm going to play it a little bit safe and keep him in the sit column. As for Carson Wentz, his fantasy production continues to be there. Some bonehead plays on the field, right? But as far as fantasy points goes, not too bad. Another 24 of them scored in Week 8, and now he's quarterback 12 overall. He's had at least 2 touchdowns in 5 straight games. Plus, we've seen a little bit of a rushing upside from Carson Wentz, getting his mobility on here just a little bit as of late, which is going to boost that floor on a weekly basis. I really don't see why that's going to change in a matchup here this week going up against the Jets. Thursday Night Football, I'm going to start Carson Wentz. Which means, just like in all my other shows, we're going to thrust it over here to Sunday Football. We're talking about the Cleveland Browns and Cincinnati Bengals. And as of late, Baker Mayfield, not so much the bake show, a little bit more of a bake sale last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers, because it wasn't great, but he's not playing bad. He's just not playing good, right? So he's just not in sync with his wide receivers. The timing is off. Odell Beckham, a lot of people kind of thought he may be traded before the trade deadline. He was not, but then it came out earlier today that he was asked to not participate in practice, so that's kind of odd. What's going on there? What would that do with the chemistry between him and Jarvis Landry? I mean, it's just a bunch of messes. But I mean, I guess if you're a Browns fan, you're used to this type of drama over the years. They also lost offensive lineman Jack Conklin, which is a big loss on that offensive line. And we know this is a very, very run-heavy offense. They're not going to go out there and rely on the passing game on a weekly basis. Now, despite the Bengals being shredded by the aforementioned Mike White just last week, I don't see that happening this week with Baker Mayfield. Cincinnati allows right around 18 fantasy points per game. And we know the Bengals and Joe Burrow can put up points forcing Cleveland to have to throw the ball, but we just don't see that high ceiling here this week. I'm going to continue to sit Baker Mayfield. As for Joe Burrow, it's time to release the Tiger King here once again in a matchup going up against the Cleveland Browns, who allow over 21 fantasy points per game, 5th most in the NFL. Plus, Burrow's had at least 3 touchdowns now in 3 straight games, currently quarterback 8 overall in fantasy football, and he's just got so many weapons. Sure, Jamar Chase is the alpha out there, but T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, we're seeing them all get involved on a weekly basis. Plus, we're kind of enjoying what we're getting from CJ Who's Your Mama at times, right? So he's definitely somebody that's really upping the ceiling, raising that bar for Joe Burrow, and he's going to continue to be a start here this week. Down to Dallas now for the Cowboys and Broncos, and does Dak Prescott return here this week? That's what everybody wants to know, right? Also, though, does Michael Gallup return this week? Another guy to pay attention to. At least they get a matchup against this Denver defense without Von Miller, who's no longer in town. But we have to realize that if Dak Prescott plays, he's easily a start. This team is a team that's winning ball games. They won without him just last week, right? If they wanted to force him back, if they wanted to rush him back early, they would have done it last week. They're winning ball games. They're going to play it safe. They need Dak down the stretch. So if he starts, he plays. If he doesn't, we're looking at Cooper Rush again at home. I don't hate it in this matchup. We saw him perform like that last week. Got plenty of weapons at his disposal with Zeke and Pollard and Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. And then if he does get Michael Gallup back, there's just a lot of options there. So I think that makes him a safe quarterback too. But honestly, we all out there want Dak Prescott to start this ballgame. As for Teddy B, Teddy Two Gloves kind of had himself a little bit of a down week 8, but now this week coming into this ballgame, no Noah Fant. Does that mean we see more Courtland Sutton? Well, we know Trayvon Diggs is banged up a little bit. Plus, Dallas just lost their linebacker Jabril Cox. Now, we know that Dallas can go out on a weekly basis and really put up points. That's going to force Teddy Two Gloves to continue to throw the ball. With Jerry Jeudy back, Courtland Sutton there, so there's still plenty of options, plus the pass-catching backs they have in the backfield. Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams, maybe they're relied upon a little bit more here this week. We've seen some Albert O sightings as of late. Still plenty of options for this to be a very fun ball game going back and forth, lots of scoring. In my opinion, Teddy's ceiling maybe a little bit lower here this week, but he's still a weekly safe start. He may not be that guy that goes out and scores 25 a week, but he's going to go out and put up 16 to 18 in a matchup in which could be back and forth, throwing the ball down the field consistently. I'll start Teddy B. Now we head down to Miami for the blockbuster matchup of the Dolphins and the Texans. Said no one ever. But we still don't know about Tyrod Taylor, right? There's rumors going around that he could return. He's still listed as day-to-day at the time of this recording, has not been activated and named the starter. So we're looking at Davis Mills here once again against the Dolphins. And it's not a bad matchup. The Dolphins allow right around 24 fantasy points per game, 3rd most in the NFL, to opposing quarterbacks. But the problem is Davis Mills plays a lot better at home than he does on the road. In fact, he hasn't thrown for a touchdown on the road since week 1, and that's not good. In fact, he only has 2 total touchdowns over his last 3 games combined, and those came last week. So that's a problem as well. Could he go out there and perform in this matchup? Sure. Am I willing to tempt fate and throw him in my starting lineup of my fantasy football roster in week 9? No, I'm not. He is a sit. As for Tua, though, and the Dolphins, he's back after a tough week 8. We did not like that matchup last week against Buffalo. This one is much better, though. Going up against the Houston Texans, who allow 22 fantasy points per game as well, 4th most in the NFL. Plus, we've really seen the ceiling before of Tua. We know he can go out there and have a QB1 style week. We saw it in week 7. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to head over to Prize Picks, and I'm going to smash the over on Tua, because right now it's set at 240.5 passing yards per game. As of late, because the Dolphins defense is not great, they're having to throw the ball 40 plus times a game here in Miami. That's going to up that ceiling. Plus, now we know Deshaun Watson, he's not coming to Miami. They're committed to Tua here for the season. Maybe a little bit less pressure, can go out and play a little bit more carefree, put up a big number against a bad team. I'm going to start Tua, which will take us over to New Orleans for the Saints and the Falcons. And can Atlanta kind of bounce back this week? I mean, they found out late in the week about Calvin Ridley. Plus, Matt Ryan had his hand cleated during the game, got stepped on. Dude was bleeding like a stuck pig all over the place. You have to imagine that was affecting his play on Sunday. So what about this week going up against the Saints? I mean, they have a chance to have some decent fantasy days, right? I mean, New Orleans is a lot better against the run than they are the pass. The good thing about that is Atlanta doesn't really run much, right? New Orleans allows 20 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, which is great. But the biggest question here is a lot of people are speculating that Marshawn Lattimore will slide over and cover Kyle Pitts to try to take him away. If that's the case, what's next? Russell Gage? What happened to Russell Gage? really, like, dude just like disappeared. He was supposed to be next man up, had a great 2020 season. I got nothing. Right, I don't know what happened to Russell Gage. They're going to need him going forward, though. What about more Cordero Patterson? Do we see more Tajay Sharp, more Mike Davis out of the backfield? The ceiling is going to be lower here in this game, but it's a game in which I expect them to be trailing more than likely. And if they don't have Kyle Pitts, they're going to have to spread the ball around a little bit more, looking for a touchdown or two, hopefully from Cordero Patterson. And like I said, maybe they involve Mike Davis a little bit more checkdowns, more short passing game, really boost the totals for Matt Ryan. May not be sexy on paper, but we're only looking for fantasy points, so I'm going to list him as a start. For New Orleans, is it Trevor Siemian or is it going to be Taysom Hill if he's activated off the concussion protocol? Couldn't be a better timing, right? I hate to lose Jameis, but they do have a couple good options. If the name Trevor Siemian sounds familiar, it's because he started in Denver just a few years ago, and that's probably what you remember him from. But which one of these options do we want? Well, Trevor Siemian didn't play half bad last week, but Taysom Hill, from a fantasy perspective, has that higher ceiling due to his rushing upside. Now, Atlanta allows right around 18 fantasy points per game, and we've seen Taysom Hill have some success against the Falcons in the past, haven't we? So we kind of need to wait and see here. Will I be surprised if they start Trevor Siemian and kind of slowly work in Taysom Hill? I won't be, because honestly, in my opinion, that may be the safer option for this team in a matchup against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I think that Trevor Siemian under center is going to benefit the pass catchers more, and maybe even like the likes of Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, but Taysom Hill's really going to limit the running backs, right? He's going to lock onto certain receivers. He's going to pepper them with targets. They're not going to be deep down the field. We know there's no Michael Thomas here for the rest of the season. That was something else that just came out today as well. We're going to really wait on the official word as of right now. When it comes to fantasy football, who do I prefer to be under center? It's Taysom Hill for his rushing upside. I have him listed as a start right now, but honestly, this situation a little bit fluid. It could change, so make sure you watch the rankings video. And then later in the week, when we do our tailgate show or even our Saturday night live stream, we'll have a little bit more clarity on the situation where we can update you a little bit more. But from a fantasy perspective, Taysom Hill is the guy with the higher ceiling. Up to New York now for the Giants and Raiders, and as if Derek Carr needed more chips stacked against him. I mean, people already think he sucks all over the place. He's very underrated. Then he had the whole John Gruden situation, and now the Henry Ruggs drama, which is absolutely horrible. We know Darren Waller's not 100% healthy, but yet Derek Carr continues to go out and just perform all year long. He's had at least 2 passing touchdowns now in 6 of his 7 games played, thrown for over 300 yards in 5 of the 7 games he's played. I can't really write this guy off anymore. They're going to have to move the ball through the air, and they have 2 running backs that are capable of catching passes out of the backfield as a safety valve. I'm going to start Derek Carr here this week. As for Daniel Jones and the Giants, I wish he had healthy weapons, right? Saquon Barkley came out that he's now on the COVID list. We talked about this in the running back episode. Wasn't really counting on Barkley here this week for sure anyway, so more than likely we won't have him. Kenny Golladay banged up, Sterling Shepard, Kadarius Toney can't stay healthy. We've seen Darius Slayton banged up at times here this year. But yet he's going out and he's borderline 18 fantasy points on a weekly basis. But he causes stress the entire game because there's just no stability in this offense. They're constantly having to rotate pieces because everybody is getting hurt. And he's only had 3 total touchdowns over his last 4 games played. In a matchup against the Raiders, they allow right around 19.5 fantasy points per game. But honestly, with no weapons that are 100% healthy, I'm going to sit Daniel Jones here this week. He'll be a little bit lower in my rankings. If you play in a 2-quarterback league, I don't mind him as your quarterback too. But in 1-quarterback leagues, there's no way he's sniffing the top 12 and should be started in rosters here this week. Over to Carolina now for the Panthers and the Patriots. And Mac Jones seemed to have kind of turned the corner a couple weeks ago, right in week 6 and 7. Well, in week 8, he hit a dead end, right? Because he didn't do a whole lot, only threw 18 of 35 for 218 yards passing, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Now gets a matchup against the Carolina Panthers, who have Stephon Gilmore active. But honestly, the bigger issue here is the running back volume. 36 running back carries alone in week 8 is really going to limit the potential production that we see from Mac Jones on a weekly basis. But we know he doesn't have those stud wide receivers. He's just not one of those offenses that's going to rely on passing like we've seen in years past. They're going to be a run-first team, kind of similar to what we see with Baker Mayfield at times. It's not ideal. It's not something where I want to start him here in fantasy football, so he's going to be a sit. As for Sam Darnold, he's still up in the air as well, right? He left severely concussed. Yeah, I guess you could say here in week 8. Is he cleared to play in time? But more importantly, Does it matter? I mean, sure, from a medical standpoint, I want to see the guy get healthy, but from a fantasy perspective, I don't know if I care right now because he only has 2 total touchdowns over his last 4 weeks played and is barely completing 50% of his passes. Now, does CMC return this week? Because that would be a huge bump in potential production, right? But maybe we see PJ Walker this week. Do I like PJ Walker? I kind of do. I kind of like what we've seen from him here whenever he's gotten the opportunity in Carolina. Going up against the Patriots, they allow right around 16.5 fantasy points per game, though 6th fewest in the NFL. And there's just too many questions surrounding this entire offense and the availability of Sam Darnold. I'm not risking it. He's going to be a sit for me here this week, which will take us down to Jacksonville for the Jaguars and the Bills. And sure, I'll take another week of a Josh Allen quarterback 1 performance, right? I'm sure you will too. And Jacksonville allows over 20 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Now, as of right this second, Josh Allen is quarterback 2 overall in fantasy football and has already had his bye week. So the guy is playing great. They're putting up points. They're definitely getting the fantasy production, right? Even though at times when we watch the Bills play, they seem a little bit like out of sync, a little bit like they really aren't clicking on all cylinders. By the end of the game, they seem to figure it out, put up big points, and Josh Allen is no different. He's a definite start. You already know that. For Jacksonville, though, Trevor Lawrence, he just isn't fantasy startable right now. He's just not. I mean, you see flashes at times where he goes out there and puts up a play or a pass attempt where you're like, wow, that was actually pretty good. It's just not consistent, right? He only has 10 total touchdowns in the 7 games played, and 3 of those came in week 1. Now he gets a matchup against the Buffalo Bills, who are number 1 in the NFL against opposing quarterbacks, allowing only 14 fantasy points per game. And honestly, when Jamal Agnew is your number 1 option in your offense, your ceiling is just too low, and you're going to remain a sit. Up to Baltimore now for the Ravens and Vikings, my Manscaped matchup of the week. And don't forget, fellas, as soon as this video is over, head over to manscaped.com. Get yourself something nice for the holidays. No, it's not just ball trimmers. They got shampoo and conditioner and body wash and the Weed Whacker. The Weed Whacker is legit when it comes to removing ear and nose hair. Trust me, fellas. I love that thing. I was sitting right there in the corner. I got a couple of, maybe I'll give one away. Anybody want a Weed Whacker? Let me know down below in the comment section if you do. But head over to manscaped.com. Use the promo code Headliners when you do. We'll give you 20% off your order and free shipping. But back to this matchup now, a matchup of Kirk Cousins and Lamar Jackson. In my opinion, for week 9, a no-brainer here. Both these guys are going to be starts. Both quarterbacks averaging right around 20 fantasy points per game. Both defenses allowing right around 18 fantasy points per game as well. They both have big-time playmakers, right, with Hollywood Brown and Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews. And we got Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and Dalvin Cook. Big plays aplenty in both of these offenses. Plus, Baltimore coming off the bye week. They're fresh. They're ready to go. They could have Latavius Murray back. And Minnesota's coming off a beatdown by Cooper Rush and the Cowboys. So you know they're going to want to get back on track as well. You already know you never sit Lamar Jackson, but in my opinion, this week, Kirk Cousins, another safe floor play that I have no issue starting here in week 9. Now we head up to Philadelphia, though, for the Eagles and Chargers. An honest question. Does anybody out there really like Nick Sirianni as a head coach for the Philadelphia Eagles? Anyone? Bueller? What? You asked? Nobody? There's nobody. Nobody likes it. I mean, why is he in the locker room teaching guys how flowers grow and stuff? Come on. I mean, congrats. You beat the Detroit Lions last week 44-6. It's the Lions, right? And it wasn't because of Jalen Hurts, that's for sure. I mean, let's be honest. He only threw the ball 14 times, but I'm not going to continue to beat up the passing inefficiencies in this offense. We already know about them. We know that if Jalen Hurts is scoring points, it's because it's due to his legs. And he's at least 6 fantasy points a game due to rushing over the last 4 straight games. So this matchup, it's not great. It's a lot more difficult than it was against the Detroit Lions because the Chargers allow only 16 fantasy points per game, 7th fewest in the NFL. But due to this rushing upside, you can't ever really sit Jalen Hurts. We mentioned this, I believe it was last week, maybe the week prior. In most quarterbacks, we're looking for that rushing upside. For Jalen Hurts, we're looking for the passing upside, right? Because we know that the floor will be there due to rushing. We need any bonus that we can get in the passing game. Do we see it here this week? I'm hoping the Chargers can get out to a little bit of a lead, forcing Philadelphia to have to throw the ball a little bit more, maybe find the end zone a time or two. That's why I'm going to continue to start Jalen Hurts. As for Herbie, Justin Herbert, I guess you can say they're in LA, he's always a start, right? There really should never be a time where you're contemplating, do I start him or not? If you do, you have too many quarterbacks on your roster because he should be locked and loaded every game that he's playing. Going up against Philadelphia, they'll have right around 18 fantasy points per game, but we've seen a little bit of a lower ceiling the last couple of weeks from Justin Herbert. And a lot of people getting a little bit worried because the production from Mike Williams has been down as well. Well, the two kind of correspond with each other, right? The lack of a production from Mike Williams here the last couple of weeks is leading to a lower ceiling for Justin Herbert. They're going to figure that out. There's going to be better days coming. Trust me. It's not like all of a sudden they just abandon Mike Williams in this offense. It's going to happen here once again. The ceiling is super high. We've seen the ceiling. He still has Keenan Allen, who he utilized a lot more last week. Plus, Austin Eckler in the backfield is a big play waiting to happen in a good matchup. We're starting Justin Herbert in week 9. Which takes us now to Kansas City and Green Bay, which was going to be my Manscaped matchup. That's what I had penciled in because I thought it was going to be Aaron Rodgers versus Patrick Mahomes. Not so much, right? Aaron Rodgers has tested positive for COVID. He has been ruled out for the week. So that now means we get Jordan Love and Patrick Mahomes. Just doesn't roll off the tongue, right? I can't make Jordan Love a Manscaped matchup of the week. I just can't do it. But last week, we saw the Green Bay offense succeed without Devontae Adams, without Allen Lazard, without MVS, losing Big Bob Tunyon due to a knee injury. And Rodgers still performed. What happens? It's a little bit of a role reversal. What if we don't have Rodgers, but we have Adams and Lazard and MVS? Can they do it again against the Kansas City Chiefs? I can't bank on that, right? I mean, I think Jordan Love has some potential in this offense, and we know he could have the opportunities, especially in a matchup going up against Kansas City, who allowed 24 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, the second most in the NFL. Could we see another Cooper Rush-esque type moment this week with Jordan Love? Entirely possible. Am I going to risk it with him on the road in Kansas City, one of the most difficult stadiums in the NFL to play with? No. I'm not. I'm going to sit Jordan Love. As for Patrick Mahomes, you know you can't sit him. But right now, you're literally worried, right? Like on a weekly basis, what the hell is going on with Patty Mahomes? Where are all these interceptions coming from? Don't just look at the box scores. Now, yeah, there's a lot of forced throws in there. I'm not going to say there's not. But a lot of these interceptions are coming off tip passes from his receivers. They're drops, they're fumbles. I mean, he's really not getting a whole lot of help right now, maybe outside of Tyreek Hill, who even himself has had a few balls go through his hands, resulting in interceptions. Not all of them are Mahomes' fault. We're just not seeing this offense click like we've seen in years past. We're used to them going out there and Mahomes throwing 40 touchdowns to only 5 interceptions. We're used to all of his wide receivers being reliable and catching everything that's around them. We're used to these circus throws, the no-look passes. They've all worked in the past. Well, right now, they're not working, right? And just because they're not doesn't mean that they don't have that capability of all of a sudden coming back in. You can't sit Patrick Mahomes. You wasted a draft pick by drafting him way too early when we told everybody not to draft Patrick Mahomes early. At this point, you're kind of pot committed, right? Unless you wasted another pick on another highly owned quarterback, you're kind of stuck starting him. But the ceiling is super high on a weekly basis. The guy can still go out, throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns on any given week, and he has the weapons to do it. If you got it, you're starting Patty Mahomes. Which now takes us out to the Bay for San Francisco and Arizona. And we got Kyler Murray this week. He's not practicing yet. I mean, we know at the end of last week's game, he was limping due to an ankle sprain. He's considered day to day. Like I said, he hasn't been at practice as of the time of this recording. And that's something we definitely need to follow closely. We'll update that on the injury video later on in the week. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Because if he's not starting, we're going to see Colt McCoy. And do we want to start Colt McCoy? No, we don't. There's a lot of better options out there, so we're really going to pay close attention because if Kyler Murray's playing, he's definitely one of those guys that we continue to start on a weekly basis. As for San Francisco and Jimmy G, he continues to do what he does, right? He's very Jimmy G-ish. He's a safe floor quarterback, kind of similar to what we see from Kirk Cousins on a weekly basis. Maybe not that guy that's going to go out there and put up huge numbers, but he's a guy that's got a safe floor on a weekly basis. And right now he's averaging right around 16, 17 fantasy points per game. But here's the kicker. Does he get George Kittle back this week? Because if he gets George Kittle back, he is the difference maker and he will raise that ceiling on a weekly basis. But Arizona allows only 14 fantasy points per game, second fewest in the NFL. Jimmy G has done well, though, against Arizona in the past, really well. In fact, in the 4 career games he's played against them, they've averaged 316 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. He may be a little bit lower in my rankings this week, may not be inside the top 12, but Jimmy G is going to be a start this week. Sunday Night Football now, Rams and Titans, and we know we start Matthew Stafford. He's quarterback 3 overall right now in fantasy football, and he's got a matchup against the Tennessee Titans, who allow over 20 fantasy points per game. Going to be another good one here for Matthew Stafford. For Ryan Tannehill, though, I am worried. I am definitely worried he's going to be playing on the road in LA. No Derrick Henry. Does he have Julio Jones? That's a question mark. And now he's got to deal with the Rams defense, who just added Von Miller as well to go along with Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. I mean, Ryan Tannehill has 6 passing touchdowns over his last 5 games combined. 3 of those were just last week. The chips are severely stacked against him this week, and I'm going to head over to Prize Picks, look at the prop here for Ryan Tannehill, which is 265.5. And I'm going to smash the under here this week because I think he really struggles on the road against the Los Angeles Rams and now this Von Miller added defense. It's not looking good. I mean, hopefully he gets Julio back to try to help things out a little bit. I'm just severely worried about Ryan Tannehill this week. I'm going to be looking for better options. He's going to be a sit. Which means we'll wrap up the week Monday Night Football in Pittsburgh for the Steelers and the Bears. And we just saw Justin Fields go out in week 8 and look 10 times better without Matt Nagy. That should be eye-opening, right? The first game without Nagy and the kid excels. Do we see a change going forward? Does it force their hand to kind of utilize him how we saw in week 8? Really on the ground. Dude had 10 carries for over 100 yards. He's kind of similar to Jalen Hurts in that aspect, right? Can't get the passing game going, but he's going to carry us with his rushing ability. That's exactly what we're looking for. Do I want to start him this week? Is he somebody that I'm ready to say, all right, he's turned that corner. He's good to go here going forward against Pittsburgh on Monday Night Football? No. On the road, a primetime game with Matt Nagy back, I got to see how they utilize him going forward before I'm willing to risk that. He's going to remain a sit. As for Big Ben, he just has a low ceiling weekly, right? It's nothing like it used to be in Pittsburgh. He only has one game all year with more than one passing touchdown in that game. That's just not good. And he hasn't thrown for over 300 yards since week 3. Not a horrible matchup going up against Chicago. He has the weapons to perform, but they're just not getting the scoring opportunities. They're not putting the ball in the end zone enough, and that's why his ceiling is so low. Once again, Big Ben finding himself in the sit column. All right, that's all my starts and sits for the quarterback position here, Week 9 fantasy football. Hopefully I was able to help shed a little bit of light on some players on your rosters. But don't forget, head over to Prize Picks now before it's too late. Get that account created. Have some fun with us. Make some extra money on the side. Plus, when you make that initial deposit and use the referral code Headliners, you're entered in to the $500 cash giveaway that we'll be announcing here end of the month. Looking forward to doing that. Get a little bit of extra presents under the Christmas tree here this year. But hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day, a great week, and we'll talk to you later.
Headline Nation.
I'm a headliner.